Welcome to the Mission Go podcast, where we sit down with leaders in our communities and businesses to talk about what inspires them to go build something bigger than themselves. We want you to be inspired and you to take on your own personal mission also. Let's go, baby. James, tell me about the 516 Project. What birthed this in you? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so with 516 Project, we're building access to hope. And so we kind of do that in three ways. One is through our home repair program, the other is through disaster response, and the third is through our Servings of Hope feeding ministry. And all of this really birthed out of the idea of just wanting to help people, wanting to kind of be an extension of the church. We wanted to find ways to get the church outside of the four walls and be able to serve people, be able to meet them where they're at. And it sort of takes two paths even in that, because we're serving the families that we're serving, that we're there doing the work on their home, or we've responded after a disaster, or we're taking them a meal, whatever that case may be. But we're also serving the volunteers. It's one of the things that was really big to me in starting this was in particular around getting men involved. And as a guy, talking to friends who aren't Christian, if you say, hey man, come to church with me. No, thanks. I'll catch you later. We'll grab a beer or something. And it's an easy decline.
Yeah.
But when you go up to him and say, hey man, why don't you come help me build Miss Jones a wheelchair ramp? Well, sure, I'll do that. Let me grab my tools.
Nice.
And so it's an easy yes.
Yeah.
And then they start to see it. And then when you say, well, hey man, why don't you come to church with me? Well, okay, yeah, let me check that out. Let me see what this is all about. So it's just it opens the doors on both sides of the people that we're serving, opens the conversation, because a lot of times they'll say, well, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you here working on my house for free? Or why did you travel 12 hours halfway across the country to cut a tree off my house after a hurricane? Or, why are you out here feeding my family when you could be at home sitting on the couch?
Yeah.
And so when those questions start getting asked, it just opens up that door for us to share with them. Well, hey, let me tell you about why I do this. Let me tell you about, what God's done in my life. Let me tell you about the relationship that I've got with Christ and why that matters, why that's important. And so it gives us the opportunity to minister to people on multiple levels, whether it's, like I said, whether it's the people that we're actually technically serving, or the person standing right next to us, swinging the hammer, or, handing out the meal with us, or whatever it is.
That's amazing. That's like triple fold, right? Like you get the opportunity to not only, serve the community, right, for the greater good, right? There's a need, there's been a tragedy, there's been some sort of disaster. Mm-hmm. You're going out, you're meeting that disaster relief. So you're serving, the community, the town, the nation, right, in that need, right? You're servicing the individual, mm-hmm. right? Because you're meeting a specific need for that person, whether it's, water, shelter, whatever the case may be. But then the awesome thing is that you're able to lead even the people who are willing to volunteer to Christ through the work that you're doing, through the example that you're setting, right?
Absolutely.
That's just like, what's the quote? St. Francis of Assisi, right? He went out there and he said, hey, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words, right? So you're preaching the gospel with your actions, with the things that you're doing.
Yep.
Dude, that's amazing. So what were you doing before you started 516?
So I've been involved in construction and things like that most of my life, since high school, and had been doing some volunteering with other organizations. One of them was a national response organization doing disaster relief. Had done some stuff locally through a couple churches. And I was a professional firefighter for 10 years. And so during that time is when I really got involved in construction ministry. And so that was through a church that I was actually part of down in Hanover County. And so through that, just kind of got that little taste of it, I guess. And really started to see the impact that it made, like we were just talking about, that whether it's the person next to you, the person you're serving, whatever it can be, and really started to see how it can unfold and be multifaceted. And so through that, we ended up, my wife and I moved back to Fredericksburg. We grew up here, and then we lived in Hanover for a while I worked for the fire department. Moved back here in 2014, and I just wasn't connected. So was trying to figure out, okay, how can I get back involved in the community? I grew up here. I loved this community. I wanted to be able to serve and help people. and just started trying to figure out, okay, where's my place? And so in 2015, we were sitting in a Sunday school class at Chancellor Baptist Church. One of the ladies said, hey, this was in probably, I think, like late August. One of the ladies said, well, hey, let's do some sort of a service project as a class. The holidays are getting ready to come up. Maybe we can find a family that needs some help for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. And so I was the guy that raised my hand and said, well, hey, I've got experience doing, this type of stuff, the wheelchair ramps and home repairs and whatever.
Here I am, send me.
Exactly. And so, if you've ever been to a small Baptist church, when you raise your hand, you're in charge.
You're done. You're toast.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in charge. Yeah,
You're the leader.
Absolutely.
You now lead this entire project.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, God just kept opening one door after another door. And by the time we left church that day, had several people that said, well, hey, I want to help out with this. Had a couple people that said, well, hey, I know somebody that needs help, and I know an elderly person that needs a wheelchair ramp, and I know a person that needs a couple repairs that has a leak, whatever it is. And so said, okay, well, let's make something happen. So we scheduled the first work day for November. And we ended up having about 35 volunteers come out. We worked on 8 houses, and I went home that evening and I told my wife, I said, there's something more to this. Like, this isn't just a one-time thing. And I didn't know, at that point, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it was. Like, it wasn't clear. I had felt a call toward this type of stuff for a while.
Yeah.
Probably since around the 2010-11 time frame. But there again, I didn't have the clarity around it to be able to say, okay, hey, this is the path, this is the next step.
Yeah.
God just kept kind of, there'd be little things that would happen. I'm like, okay, something's going on here. And so that was when kind of that clarity sort of started to come together.
You can feel yourself being prepared, but you don't know for what.
Could feel it being prepared. Could feel it. Could feel things happening. And like I said, doors just kept opening that, looking at it from a worldly perspective, made zero sense. I got a call a few days later. I got a call from a friend of mine, and she said, hey, I heard you're thinking about starting a nonprofit. I had told maybe 2 people outside of my wife that I was even considering that.
Well, everybody has those friends.
Welcome to Fredericksburg. Everybody knows everybody,
right? It's like telephone, television, tele-Susie, right? You get the news out there, or Bob, tele-Bob.
Right.
It could be tele-Bob. No offense to Susie.
So she calls and she's like, well, hey, you need to talk to so and so. He's got experience in that area. Blah blah.
Yeah.
So and so happened to be a lawyer. I'm like,
okay.
All I saw was I started dollar signs started flashing in front of my eye.
Oh gosh, I can't afford a lawyer.
Right. And so I'm like, well, I'll call the guy, whatever. So I call him, and I mean, within 3 seconds on the phone, he's like, okay, I need you to fill out this and do this. I'm gonna send you this, and press hard 3 copies. And I'm like, whoa, time. Like, I need to know how much this is costing. Like, I've never worked with a lawyer like this before. He's like, oh no, man, I'm covering everything. All you gotta do is pay the filing fees with the government and the IRS.
Pro bono?
Pro bono.
What?
All the way. I'm like, okay, all right. I've never heard a lawyer say that before. Cool. Love all the lawyers out there. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. We need lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely.
We definitely need them.
So I was like, all right, well, what are the government filing fees going to be? He gave me a figure. I was like, all right, great. I said, well, let's get everything filled out, and then, let me get some money together, because obviously I didn't have any fundraising going on at this point, and couldn't, I've got young kids. I couldn't bankroll it myself. A couple of days later, phone rings again, and it's a local realtor. He says, hey, man, heard you were starting a nonprofit. There's a check on my desk for you.
What?
Go pick up the check, exact amount of the fees.
Love it.
Like, okay. And so, everything just was falling into place. So that was November, December of 2015. By the end of February of 2016, we got our nonprofit letter back from the IRS, which, according to what I've heard, is crazy really quick.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was like 2-3 months.
That's crazy quick. I'm gonna pause you for 1 second. Right, I want to address that. Right, that is crazy quick. So here's the thing. Here's how you know that you are following the path that God is putting you on, is because things are happening. Right. That's not to say that people can't come up against opposition and have to overcome that.
Sure.
But like when you know God is putting you in a certain direction, and then things just seem to be way easier than everybody tells you they should be.
Yep.
That's the hand of God. That's God just like moving you in the path that He wants you in. And when you are starting to fulfill that calling in your life, and you're just saying, "Here I am," just like raising your hand in the church, right? You're like, I got this. I can do that, right? When you just say, here's my skill set, Lord. Like, what can you do with this?
Yep.
Like, he just like doors just open, and it's
Yeah.
crazy to hear it, right? It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I thought it was crazy. People I talked to thought it was crazy. Literally, I wish I had saved it. I need to go search for it again. But literally, the first like publication that was ever out about 516 Project was some blog where this guy was just bashing me up one side and down the other because there's no possible way that, you know, this guy's a liar. There's no possible way he set this all up in 3 months and blah, blah. I'm like, I got the documentation, dude.
Right.
IRS right here. Like, you know. So I was like, all right, that's my first foray into nonprofit is I got this guy bashing me online. Great. But yeah, so it just kept going from there. And so we started doing work days. You know, at that point, I was still working full time, and this was totally supposed to be a side project, just something, you know, good to do for the community, you know, something like that. It wasn't really supposed to be. It certainly wasn't supposed to be what I was doing full time.
Yeah,
and
because you're still working a full time.
I was still working full time, you know, and so that first year in 2016, we served about 12 families. And so in my head, I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like one a month, that's great, perfect. Like let's just keep doing that.
Yeah.
17 rolls around, and we served almost 30 families. I'm like, oh, cool, we doubled. That's pretty neat. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just try. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
24, 30. That's
we
good.
can manage that.
Yeah, we can manage 2 a month. We can do that. 18 rolls around, and it's just, I mean, it's off to the races. I think we had hit over 30 by like June. It was insane. And so, you know, there again, you know, all these things are happening. Like back in 17, I was saying, well, we need to find a truck because I had like a Ram 1500 that could barely pull a trailer.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, we need to find a truck that can pull a tool trailer so we can get the equipment and stuff everywhere. And literally, there was a F-350 sitting in a field on the way to my mom's house that I had seen sitting there for about a year and a half. And so I was like, I wonder if anybody knows this guy. So reached out to one of my mom's friends, said, hey, you know, they're out in King George. He was from the area. I said, hey, do you know who this guy is? He's like, oh, let me find out and make a few phone calls. A couple hours later, he calls me back. Yeah, here's his name and number. Give him a shout. Okay. So I called him up and I said, hey, man, I noticed this truck sitting out there. I run a nonprofit. We're looking for a truck. Are you interested in selling it? He's like, man, that truck doesn't run. If you want it, come get it. It was, okay, sure. I'll come check it out. So come to find out, the transmission had gone bad in it, and he didn't want to spend the money to replace the transmission. Yeah. It was a 2005 F-350, had 93,000 miles on it, diesel. Like, other than that, truck was in immaculate condition. So hooked it up on a tow truck, got the transmission rebuilt, and for about $3,000, we had a truck.
Love it.
And that truck's now been to, we still have that truck, and it's been to Texas, it's been to, we just took it to Tennessee, like it's been all over the country. And, you know, I think it's got about 150,000 miles on it now. But, you know, so stuff like that just kept on happening. And so we get into 18, like the things are blowing up, and I constantly was having this, that feeling of, man, there's something more, even beyond what we're seeing right here. Like this is not, something's not right with me. And yeah, I was going to work and I was hating life.
Yeah, how many hours how many hours when you combine your work schedule and then you add in the volunteer schedule?
Let's backtrack a little. So I'm a workaholic. Just by nature.
All right, number one.
I grew up in a small business family.
My name is James.
Exactly.
I'm a workaholic.
Yeah. Okay. I grew up in a small business family, and so life and work were all one thing. There was no separation of that. So I've always been a workaholic. Still am to this day. I do now. Am a little better about taking time off and stuff, but I enjoy working. I just do. Yeah. People say like, well, you know, what do you do to relax? Oh, I figure out our next fundraiser or figure out the next project. Like that's fun to me. I know I'm weird. I get it, but so yeah, I was putting in crazy hours between working full time plus trying to do all this stuff, and so I was working for the family business at that point, and in July, it literally hit me like a ton of bricks, like. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. Like you're supposed to be running this ministry, serving people, and this is where you're supposed to be. This is what you were called to do.
Okay.
And I've never heard like the audible voice of God, but that was like the closest I can ever explain to it. Like it literally, like in a second, I was literally at work. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was like this pressure just came off of me, and I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it. It was so clear. It was so clear.
Now, did somebody make you really mad just before that?
No,
at work?
no,
You're
just normal.
Forget this. I'm
normal
out.
day. Yeah, just normal day.
Normal day. All right.
And so I walked back into my mom's office and I said, "Hey," I said, "I'm done. I'm out. I can't do this anymore."
Yeah, that's right. Because it was a family business,
Yeah, it was family
right?
business, yeah.
Family business.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what is that? What was that?
business that I was supposed to be like taking over in a few years?
That's
like,
right.
Yeah.
So what was that interaction like?
And so she looks at me and she's like, okay. So she thought I was having a bad day, needed a little break. Like, okay.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow. You know, I was like, no, like, seriously, I'm done. Like, I'm not, this is not where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, well, we'll talk, you know. And so, fine. So, you know, I left and went on home. Of course, my wife gets home from work a little while later. She's like, wait, why are you here? Because I don't work till like 6 or 7 at night, you know.
Yeah.
And I told her, and she's like, what do you mean you quit? Like, how are you getting paid? It's like, I'm not really sure yet. We're going to figure that out. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, she's a very gracious woman, thankfully.
Has to be.
Yeah. To put up with me on many
Anybody
facets.
that comes home from work and says,
Right.
"Yeah, I resigned. How you
Yeah,
getting paid?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that business I was going to take over that's successful. Yep, not going to do that
But
anymore.
like, okay. Well, yeah.
So yeah, you know, July 2018, I went full time and have been full time with it ever since. But it was so clear to me that this was the way I was supposed to go. Very few times in my life have I felt absolute clarity about something, and that was probably one of 3 times in my entire life where I felt, okay, this makes absolutely no sense from a worldly standpoint. It just doesn't make sense. Like, who in their right mind quits a job that's a family business that they're getting ready to take over the business within a couple of years? Like, that makes no sense at all. But I felt absolute clarity about it. Like, I knew that that's what God wanted me to do.
That's such a common thing amongst people that I've talked to, whether they're entrepreneurs or faith-based leaders. It's they've had that moment, and it's like just this. They can identify the moment in their life, the time where they were, what was going on. They can identify that moment and say, "This is when, this is the line in the sand, right?
Yep.
This is the moment when, my life went from the trajectory it was on to this new path that God has set me on, right? And it's good to have people share that, right? Because a lot of people, when they feel pulled, like they're in the phase where you were at, where you're like, I can feel God building me towards something, but I don't know what that is, and they don't have clarity. Right. And they want to serve God. They want to do what is right. And sometimes they can push themselves in directions that are not necessarily right. But our God is a God of order. Right. And from the people I've been talking to, it's very clear that he will prepare you.
Yep.
And he will let you know when it's time.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's so good that you shared that. You had that moment of clarity, like this is the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was very clear, and I don't even, like I said, I can't describe it, because it was that kind of a moment where there was absolutely zero doubt in my mind. None of it made sense. And I think that's what made it so perfect, is that it didn't make sense. Because if it had made sense, I could have explained it away. And so the fact that it didn't make sense, and from a worldly perspective or whatever, was what made it just made it a perfect moment. Yeah. Because there was no way I couldn't say, oh well, yeah, that makes sense because I've got this coming in over here that's going to take care of the bills, and I've got this happening over here that's going to do that. None of that was there. Yeah. It was just clear, like, hey, you need to trust me. Step off the cliff, and I'm going to catch you.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Dude, I love it. All right, so you stepped off the cliff. Yeah. Bring us to, the cliff jump to today, right? So where are we at? Like, because obviously, I mean, you Texas, Tennessee, right? You've scaled this thing beyond, Spotsylvania, right? So what was the scaling process like in serving people? And, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we're sitting now. Like I said, I'm full time. We've got one other guy that's full time, a couple people that are part time, and then all the volunteers and everything. We just broke over 600 registered volunteers about a month ago. And we've got currently we've got 2 locations. So obviously here in Fredericksburg, and then we've got a location in Panama City, Florida. And then here in a couple months, we're launching another location in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
I got a heart for Fort Leonard Wood. That's where I did my basic.
Right. Yeah. Do you feel like doing push-ups right now, just hearing that?
No.
But yeah, so and that is all, even the stuff here locally and all that it's all just been so God ordained and organic. I've had a vision and this thought of like, hey man, I'd love to do this all over the country. But it was never like, I never sat down and said, okay, here's A, B, C, D to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yes, we do planning and we have vision and all that sort of stuff, but all of it has come together. So like Panama City, we had a couple that volunteered with us that were here. We went to church together. They both worked out at Dahlgren, and they came to me and said, well, hey, my job's getting transferred down to Tyndall Air Force Base right outside of Panama City. I know you were down there after Hurricane Michael serving. Do you know anybody in that area that we could get plugged in with? And I was like, well, yeah, okay, let's figure out what's going on down there. And so reached out to some of the churches that we had partnered with when we had been down there after Hurricane Michael. There was still some stuff going on at that point from the hurricane, but there wasn't really anything, kind of community-based doing what we do with the wheelchair ramps and repairs and stuff. A couple churches that did like a project here, project there sort of thing. And so I called them back. I was like, well, hey, what if we just copy and paste what we're doing here and do it down there? So that's been a dream of mine anyway. Like, let's just see if we can make it happen. I said, and I told them flat to their face, like, y'all are going to be the guinea pigs on this because, we've never done it.
Yeah.
And so that's how that happened. They moved down there, and a couple of months later, we put out the word, and a couple of churches got involved. Right now, North Star Church down there has been crazy involved and just loving what we were able to do. And so we've partnered up with them on a bunch of stuff and built all kinds of wheelchair ramps and done roofs and all sorts of stuff. But it just there again, it just God clearly placed Jana and Tommy right there and said, hey, here's the next opportunity.
Yeah.
With Fort Leonard Wood, I was a part of an online coaching group, some leadership coaching and stuff. And the guy that was running it was in the Army, getting ready to retire, and that's where he was stationed. And so a lot of people that were part of the group were in that general area. And through the group, we started talking about what we do or what I do and everything. And so this was probably year or so ago, one of the guys had reached out to me and said, hey man, I'd love to get something like that going here. We've got a huge veteran population because of the base. There's a lot of people that need wheelchair ramps. He's like, I've already seen, some needs that are popping up on Facebook that I see and stuff. And I said, man, I'd love to, but I was like, I got to have somebody there that can kind of take the horns and run the reins, because I can't be in two places.
No.
I can, we can set it all up. We've got kind of this guinea pig operation
God
down here.
God made you awesome. He made you perfect and beautiful.
But not omnipresent.
He made you not omnipresent, right? He knit you beautifully in your mother's womb, but he made one.
Right.
He didn't make two.
One and
three.
only.
He made one. Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, I don't know if I can do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get that, but put the word out. If you see anybody that's interested, let's talk. So, like I said, about a year goes by, and he called me back in July and says, man, it has been just eating me up that I didn't say yes to you. I was like, and I'd forgotten about that conversation. And so I'm like, I appreciate that. What are you talking about? I'm devastated. What are you talking about? He says, man, when you said you needed somebody to lead this thing, if we wanted to do it out here, I should have said yes. I'm like, yeah, you should have. Sounds good to me.
You still can.
It's like, so are you saying yes now? But yeah, and he's like, yeah, man, I want to see what we can make happen to this.
That's beautiful.
And so we've been talking back and forth and everything. We're going to go out and do an interest meeting in January, and then planning on doing the launch out there sometime in April or May.
Dude, it's beautiful. See, God took your yes, right,
Yep.
and gave you the opportunity to create yeses for other people, right?
Absolutely.
So other people, forget the people who are being served aside, right? Having the opportunity to just say yes to God, right? Whatever it is, right? So the volunteers, right?
Yep.
God has given you the platform to give the volunteers the opportunity to say yes to God, whether they know it or not,
Right.
right? And that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you're creating the yes, right? So we came back from Israel, my wife and I, and we went to Israel in like April of this year, right? And when you do the touristy thing, they're always selling, like necklaces or whatever. So she bought a necklace with Hebrew script on it, and it says Hanini, right? Which means here I am, Lord, right? Here I am, Hanini, right? So what you're doing is you've created the opportunity for other people to say, here I am, use me, send me, right? Let me do something to serve, right?
Yep.
And that's
what
freaking
Isaiah
beautiful.
something. What is that?
Yeah,
Isaiah. I
Isaiah.
can't remember what verse, but I know it's in Isaiah.
Yeah, who can I send?
Yeah.
Hanini,
Here I am. Send
Here
me.
I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, and that's it. It's just it's being willing to say yes, and being willing to, God's given all of us gifts, and every one of us has different gifts, and some of it's physical, some of it's mental, some of it's financial. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, and when you could piece all that together and say yes, amazing things happen.
Yeah.
And that's where I think one of the things that I've grown in and begun to understand through all of this, and through starting a nonprofit and running everything. I always looked at, early on in my Christian walk, I definitely looked at the gifting and stuff as it had to be something physical. Like it had to be the swinging the hammers, or the building something, or going and doing something, whether it was, disaster relief or whatever. But there's all those other pieces to it that play into that. There's the person that's just gifted with prayer and vigilance, and to be able to know that they're praying for you and praying for the people that you serve. Yeah. That is so huge. I've got a lady that from my mom's church. She'll call me, once a week, every other week, and just pray for me over the phone.
Yeah.
And she's probably, I think she's in her 80s, so I mean she can't come out and do the physical work, but I know that every day she's praying for me by name. That's huge.
That's massive.
There's folks that will come out, and we had a group from a church a couple weeks ago said, hey, we'd love to do something with you. We're just a kind of a small group that we meet on Wednesday mornings. I know you probably don't have something specifically on Wednesday morning. And I said, well, hey, would y'all like to do something just at your small group time? I'm like, okay, sure. It was a group of moms they met after they dropped their kids off at school. And so they're like, well, yeah. I was like, well, hey, I've got this list of volunteers from the past couple months that I'd love to write some thank you cards. Would y'all be willing to help write some thank you cards? Oh yeah. So they, during their small group time, wrote thank you cards to some volunteers that have been out over the past month.
Yeah.
So there's folks that have the financial gifting, that have, God has given them blessings through finances, and they're able to say, hey, we can't come out and do the work, but we can write the check to cover the materials, or we can cover the fuel.
Just as good as Here
absolutely,
I Am, Send Me.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's part of Here I Am, Send Me.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, there are so many different aspects of sending.
Yeah.
It's not always physically walking there or going somewhere. It can be. It's writing that check. It's saying the prayer. It's doing something, totally seemingly unrelated.
Yeah.
That makes it all happen.
That's why it's the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Right? It's not
Absolutely.
the hand of Christ, the foot of Christ, right? The body. It's all the parts together.
Yeah, everything has to work in unison.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So people, a lot of times people like, and they like numbers, right? So if you were to, Tawan's looking at me. People like numbers. Tawan's like, what are you talking about? Chilling. All right. People like numbers, right? So, since you've scaled up right? And you're serving all these communities. Like, how many households do you think you've impacted? I'm kind of leading you into a trick question,
Okay.
right?
Great.
So, how many households do you think you've impacted?
So I have not compiled numbers of year to year to year, but I know that this year we've served over 600 people. And that's probably, that's a mixture of our, the home repairs, the disaster response, and the feeding ministry.
Okay.
But yeah, it's grown obviously exponentially.
Yeah.
Since, that first year of serving 12.
Yeah.
And being able to, I mean, even thinking about that now, there's another thing that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's not logical.
No, it's not.
God's not logical.
And this is where I was throwing the trick question in there for you, right? Because my question was, how many households have you impacted? Right. Way more than 600.
Way more. Yeah.
Right. Because you've got the volunteers.
You got the volunteers. You got I tell people this all the time. Like they'll say, well, what are some ways that you can share? And I tell this to our volunteers in particular. Like if you're wearing, so we give all our volunteers a shirt that has the 516 Project logo on it. They're kind of a bright blue, so they kind of stand out. And I'm like, if you're wearing one of these shirts, like even if you're not wearing one of these shirts, God's putting things in place that you probably don't even notice.
Yeah.
That are giving you opportunities to share. But I said, I promise you, if you're wearing this shirt, those opportunities are going to be in your face because somebody's going to walk up to you and say, hey, what's 516 Project all about?
Yeah.
I tell people, like, I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to somebody about Jesus pumping fuel at Wawa. Because I'm standing there with a truck with the logo on the side of it and my shirt or whatever. Somebody will say, hey, what's 516 all about? And here we go. Let's have a chat, while we're pumping fuel at the Wawa. So God's gonna open up those doors and put people in front of you to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So you can't. I wouldn't even be able to guess how many families have been impacted when you spread it out like that.
Yeah, that's my point. It's massive, right? And it all comes down to the moment of clarity, and you're jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
Right.
And saying yes.
Saying yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you encourage more people to say yes?
Say yes.
Say just
but
Nike, right?
But
just
it sounds silly. Like we laugh saying it, but it's that simple.
Yeah.
Say yes. Like if God has put it on you, and like for me, it was, what was it? 6 years, 13, 14, yeah, 5.5 years of me saying no or not understanding or not having what I thought was clarity. Because it was in the 2013 time frame. I was in Louisiana after a hurricane. I forget which hurricane it was at this point. But I can remember, we were working on a house. I came back. We were staying at a church, and we came back that night. And I think I had an air mattress or cot or something. I'm just kind of laying there, physically just exhausted. And I thought, man, like this is what I need to do. But I got young kids. I had a job. I was still working for the fire department at that point. Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to, leave all that and do this. And so things kept happening over that next, 5.5 years and leading up until that July of 2018, when it finally, it clicked. Everything was clear. And I was like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this. God's going to take care of me and my family. And here we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, just say yes. And don't wait as long as I did to say yes.
So how can someone listening to this podcast, or maybe it's been shared to them, how can someone say yes to 516? How can someone get in contact with your team and say yes, whether that's serving, whether that's getting you set up in Sacramento or wherever, right? Like how can someone say yes to helping?
Yeah, so, obviously we have the website, it's 516project.org, a lot of information on there. And just reach out to us and have that conversation. If there's something that you feel led to doing, whether it's praying or volunteering or donating or whatever the case is, there is a way for you to say yes. And people sometimes say I'm crazy for doing this, but I tell everybody, like, even if it's not saying yes to what we're doing, there's something God's calling you to.
Amen.
You know, maybe it's not 516 Project. Maybe it's, you know, feeding people. Maybe it's, you know, going to Mozambique or, you know, wherever. I don't know why I picked Mozambique.
What's wrong with Zurich?
Yeah, Zurich. You got an affinity for Zurich, but that's where all the rich people are. You know, so maybe they're going to go there to get the people to donate to.
Listen,
see, there we go.
Bro, rich people need Jesus.
Absolutely.
Everybody does.
Absolutely.
Even the richest person in the world is impoverished compared to what my king has.
Absolutely.
So, so Zurich.
But yeah, it's just, you know, but pay attention and find what God is putting in front of you.
Yeah.
There's something that he's laid on your heart and you know it. You're probably trying, you know, you're like me. You're like, oh, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So what? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
God doesn't always make sense to us. Yeah. He knows what's going on.
The widow's mite, right?
Right.
She gave her 2 cents. Doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
But whether she saw it in this world or not, right?
Yeah.
Like how Jesus identified her.
Yeah.
Jesus told that story, right?
And,
so how impactful is that?
And that goes into the, you know, the whole blessings thing. Like don't forget, blessings aren't always dollars and trucks and houses and whatever.
Preach.
I say to the mortgage guy, sorry.
Houses are good.
Houses are awesome. Get a mortgage from Nick Bond Mortgage. He's great. No, but seriously, like, you know, that's not always what the blessing is. Like, I think, I guess as Americanized culture and Christianity, we get that kind of false thing of, oh, you know, blessing means money. No, it doesn't.
No.
Blessing can mean so many other things that have nothing to do with your finances.
Nothing.
You know, and honestly, I mean, some of the poorest people from a financial standpoint that I've ever met are some of the richest people that I know.
Man, we were in
because
Costa Rica.
their faith, their desire to serve God is just astronomical.
We were in Costa Rica on this last trip with my church, and my pastor's wife. They went and visited a home, and when it was rough, like you know, like really rough. Like, dude
wouldn't have passed the home inspection for the mortgage.
Wouldn't have passed the inspection to condemn the home. Right. Like it was rough.
Absolutely.
Right? Like half a shanty. Right. Had nothing. Right. And this dude is just in his little place. Right. Pumping out worship music.
Yeah.
Living in the joy of the Lord.
Yeah.
Right. And it has nothing. It has. God gives you this. Right. God gives you the joy of the Lord, the peace, just from saying yes to Him.
Yeah.
Right. He gives you that peace that it's above whatever this earth can offer. Right. So just like what you said, the richest people have God. Right. It doesn't matter about this world or wealth or whatever.
Yep.
Right. You know, I was telling somebody earlier today. You know, I store my treasures in heaven. Right. And that's not giving. That's not tithing or whatever. Right. That's good. But I really, truly believe that my treasures in heaven are going to be the people who have been impacted and have fallen in love with Jesus Christ because of what we've done, the actions that we've taken, our desire to say, yes, here I am.
Yeah.
Right. And just like what you're talking about, right. You have hit 600-ish families this year. Multiply that out by the other people impacted. Right. So that impact is huge. And some of those stories you will never know, right? But that's your blessing in heaven.
Yeah,
right?
you'll never know. And like I said, I mean, I obviously don't know what it's going to be like when we get to heaven. But like you said, I can't help but think that there's going to be that time where, you know, you're going to be in heaven. You'll meet somebody, or you know, and it's going to be that moment of, hey, man, because you know you prayed with Mr. Johnson. He was my, you know, second cousin, and he told my mom, and then, you know, who knows how far that trail can go down.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's going to be the exponential outreach potential is huge.
Yeah. No, I freaking love it. No, for real. Like, and it's amazing. Your story is amazing. We don't have time to get all into it today, but just everything that God has done and laid out for you, and just your yes, right? God can do so much with our yes, and I'm grateful to know you. Thanks. Right, and to have you in my life to encourage me to say yes, right? Sometimes you need those brothers to help you, encourage you, right? And I thank you for coming on today and talking through all this. Is there anything imparting that you think that we should share to the general public? 516project.org.
Yeah. Little plug.
Yeah, no.
No, yeah, definitely, from getting involved with us, obviously, jump on 516project.org, check out what we've got going on there. We're pretty active on social media. All the platforms, it's at the 516 Project. We had to add the in there because there was a 516 Project somewhere out in like Kalamazoo or something. But all of our social media has that the on the front of it.
Hey, you know what? I'm totally missing something here. I hate to interrupt you. What does 516 mean? I can't believe I didn't address that.
We jumped right over top of that, didn't we?
We skipped way right over that. What does 516
So 516 comes from Matthew 5:16.
Okay.
And that's let your light so shine before men that they would see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And so that verse has been something that it's been crazy important to me. I guess like a personal verse or whatever you want to call it. So when I first got saved, I didn't have one of those light bulb moments like a lot of people you hear about. Like you hear about folks like, oh yeah, I accepted Jesus and my life was changed, 180 immediately. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I accepted Jesus and the next day was the next day.
The next day was Thursday.
Yeah, things kept rolling along. And so I struggled for a long time early on in my walk about like, okay, well, wait, did I do it right? Did I really accept Jesus? Did I do something wrong? Am I not? Do I believe? Like I struggled with that because I struggled with the whole hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing. This is great, and bringing that into my faith and combining. I was kind of living like my work life and my personal life and my faith life, and they were all sort of different lanes. Mm-hmm. And so a friend of mine was doing a rebuild trip out in the Eastern Shore, and he called me up and said, hey, man, we're going to be doing these daily devotionals while we're out there. Would you write a devotional? It's like, and I think I had been a Christian maybe a year and a half, 2 years at this point. So, baby Christian or whatever you want to call it. I'm like, man, I've never written a devotional. Like, I've barely read devotionals. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, you got it. You can do it. Oh, okay, sure, yeah. So here again, say yes.
Yeah.
And so I literally was flipping through the Bible, like, man, how do I do this? What I do? And it was one of those, how in the movies, like you see that they open the book and like the light comes off the page and the words like blow up or whatever. It was like that, like that verse just like bam was right there. I was
like Pulp Fiction, like the box in
right,
Pulp Fiction.
Right. But it was one of those like, man, like I read that verse and started reading the whole chapter and everything, and I was like, that was my light bulb moment, a couple years into it of like, that's what it's about. Like I'm supposed to serve God by serving His children.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. It's not about like it's all about this is how I can show people God.
This little light of mine.
Yeah, and so that verse has just been crazy important to me ever since then. And so when we were trying to figure out, hey, what do we call this thing? It's like, there we go, 516 Project.
I love it. I love it. 516project.org. Check it out, everybody. Reach out to James and his team and say yes.
Absolutely.
Say yes. Brother, thank you.
Thank you
for your time today.
Appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it. You're an inspiration.
Thanks.
I appreciate you.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Bond Mortgage Lending. If you need help to put a plan in place to buy your space, check out nickcanhelp.com.